Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's Craig and Bob. We are talking movies as always. Took a week off, Bob, but we're back at it, and you have quite a few selections for us today, cleaning up a little bit of the end of the year slate, but then also a newer release, and then some Oscar contenders as well. So we're going to get started today with the newest release. Had a pretty solid box office return, and that is Megan. Tell us a little bit about Megan.
Okay, well, Megan is the story of this uh, toy maker played by Allison Williams, who designs an android for her recently orphaned niece to be her best friend and also subtly take on some parental responsibilities that
Sure.
she isn't ready to take on herself. Um, the android, because it's I guess programmed by somebody with rather questionable parenting skills,
Okay.
uh, eventually becomes maybe a little too overprotective, and then eventually turns malevolent and evil. And so you've got by the end of the movie, it's a horror movie about a deranged little girl robot.
Okay.
But
Obviously released here during this sort of a dead period in movies with you have got the post holiday release schedule, Oscar contenders at the end of the year. You're blending this in, of course, with Avatar: The Way of Water, and also some maybe limited releases that are getting expanded releases. It did do 30 million or so at the box office. Does this kind of satisfy that horror movie need here at the beginning of the year that movie studios seem to think people like?
oh, absolutely, yeah. This
Yeah.
is this is this. I mean, there's no dead period here because Megan is here to fill that gap.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's I believe it's a second place for movies that have opened in the first week of the year. I believe it's the number two record holder for that.
Okay.
The only movie to have opened in the first week of the year to make more money in its opening weekend was the very poorly received horror movie The Devil Inside.
Okay. Well, I
So
mean, it sounds like. Did you like Megan? What's your final grade for Megan?
I give Megan a B. Very very funny movie. Not as effective as a horror movie as it probably
Okay.
wants to be, but very funny as a comedy because of the social skills developed by this android and what a compelling villain she makes.
Okay. Well, interesting. So, maybe something for moviegoers to kind of cleanse the palate after Avatar or, maybe some of the other big holiday releases. So, very interesting. Well, one movie that we didn't get quite caught up on at the end of the year was Puss in Boots. This is The Last Wish. So, a sequel to the character we were first introduced in the Shrek franchise. It seems like we've had sort of a. I know this isn't a sequel that has come out a couple of years after the original. It's been a little while since we've seen Puss in Boots.
It's been over a decade.
Yeah, so is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish a worthy sequel? Is it worth your time?
I think it's better than the last Puss in Boots movie
Okay,
because just about everything about it is cute and funny. The voice performances are all top notch, especially Banderas in the lead as Puss in Boots. Every time he opens his mouth, it's funny. It's just cute all around. He uses up 8 of his 9 lives, and
right.
goes on a quest to find some MacGuffin that can restore them, but it's only good for one wish, and there are a lot of other parties that want to get to this thing first. It's a star. Yeah, they're trying to get everybody's trying to get to a star. There's him. There's Salma Hayek's character in an old Flame of Pusses. Um, there's Goldilocks in the Three Bears. Goldilocks is voiced by Florence Pugh, and she and the Three Bears are so funny. I could see a spinoff
Okay.
for just them. And Big Jack Horner, voiced by John Mulaney, he's in the mix, and he's yeah. They're all trying to get to this star.
Okay. Well,
Uh,
looking at the trailers, it seemed to have a pretty interesting visual style. Did anything stand out to you? Maybe how it was animated, or just any visual tricks that maybe it played, or maybe some interesting changes from a standard animated fare.
well, it's computer animated. There are some sequences where it goes to kind of a 2D style that
Right.
I can't say I cared for. Now, I've
Okay.
seen some reviewers say that they like it
Okay.
when it goes to this kind of 2D style during action sequences. Not my cup of tea, but by all means, take the family, see it for yourselves. Maybe you'll like it
Okay.
when it does that.
Well, obviously, maybe positioning itself for a potential Oscar nomination for Best Animated Feature. Do you think it belongs in that category? What's your final grade on Puss in Boots: The Last Wish?
It belongs in that category, but I would give it to Turning Red, although I haven't seen Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which I understand is going to be a major player in that category. So, maybe I'd wind up preferring that to Turning Red, but I prefer Turning Red to Puss in Boots.
Okay. All right. A final grade for Puss in Boots?
B.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, one of those late end of the year releases that's getting a little bit wider play now as the year goes along is Tom Hanks in A Man Called Otto. Bob, haven't heard a lot of great things about this, although Tom Hanks is a titan in the industry. Tell us a little bit about that film.
It's a fine movie. Tom Hanks plays this grouchy retiree who's a real stickler for the rules around his neighborhood.
Mhm.
Um, he was president of the homeowners association for a while, and he still acts like he is, and he's nitpicky about rules, and no, none of his neighbors really like him, but at the end of the day, he has a heart of gold, and a very very large heart, both literally and figuratively.
Okay. Um,
Um,
does it work? I mean, obviously, this is one of those movies that's positioned at the end of the year for maybe a Oscar season, but I haven't really heard a lot of the Oscar buzz for it. I mean, does this movie work overall for you?
it does work. It works a lot better than the trailers make it seem.
Okay.
The trailers, when you just get a taste of the character, it just looks like Tom Hanks doing a voice, doing a grouchy guy voice.
Yeah.
But once you get into the movie and it's a fully realized character, you see where he's coming from with this performance, and it's a much better performance than the trailers make it seem.
Okay. Overall, what's your final grade for A Man Called Otto?
I give it a B minus.
Okay.
It's
All
not.
right.
It's there's a large portion of it that's not pleasant. You can kind of see where it's going in a lot of places, and it takes forever to end. It seems like it ends like three different times, and then it's not done yet.
Hmm.
Um, because it is getting a an expanded release this coming weekend.
Sure.
It will probably be my print review for next week.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, we do have a couple of big Oscar contenders maybe here to
Yes.
talk about. The next one that we're going to discuss is The Fablemans. Now, this is the Steven Spielberg real. I mean, this is a deeply personal film for Spielberg. This is essentially how he kind of grew up to become Steven Spielberg, the filmmaker. His life, sort of playing out with his family dynamic and his desire to become a filmmaker. Tell us about The Fablemans and if it's maybe worthy of the hype that it's getting here for several Oscar nominations.
Well, it's definitely a very well made movie. You see him at a young age discovering his love of filmmaking. He sees the Oscar winner, The Greatest Show on Earth. Um, and he's traumatized but also fascinated by the train crash sequence in that movie. Um, he gets a train set for Hanukkah, and he also gets a camera, and he films the train crashing. His parents don't like him crashing the model train,
Mm.
so he sets up a camera to film it crash. He can crash it once, and then he can just watch the crash over and over again. So yeah, so he doesn't have to keep crashing the expensive model train.
Sure.
And then we see him grow up, mature. Um, we see kind of his family kind of fall apart, um, and we see him, kind of come of age, both in terms of uh, his maturing filmmaking tastes and his personal life. His first girlfriend, the rise and fall of their relationship, and then ultimately he winds up in Hollywood. Um, struggling but able to talk to. I won't reveal it, but in the last scene of the movie, he talks to one of the greatest filmmakers of all time.
Yeah. Ultimately, does the Fablemans work for you? I mean, is this a another home run from Spielberg, who's probably one of the finest living directors and really one of the finest directors we've ever seen in filmmaking? Does this work for you?
Um, yes, on a technical level, everything is great.
Mm,
It's almost definitely going to win him Best Director at the Oscars
okay.
because it's a movie. It's a movie about the love of movies, and
Right.
Oscar voters love that.
They do. Yes, they do.
Wasn't really connecting with the characters or the story probably the way he wanted to. Um, but all the artistic flourishes make this an excellently directed movie.
Okay.
Ultimately, I give it a B minus.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, we transitioned from one Oscar contender in several categories to another Oscar contender in several categories. This is the Banshees of Inisherin. Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson team up with Martin McDonough for the second time. The trio was ultra fantastic in Bruges. I'm not sure if you're a fan of In Bruges. I know
Oh,
we've
that's a
talked.
classic. I'm a
It's
huge
it's
fan of that movie.
hilarious, and I tell you what, Ray Fiennes was hilarious in that film, especially in detailing what gun he wanted for and also his love for Bruges and sending Colin Farrell there to essentially be murdered, thinking that that would be a real treat for Colin Farrell's character to vacation in Bruges before he's ultimately shot. And McDonough is one of these directors where he really, I mean, we're talking pitch black comedy, really.
Yeah.
And, whether it's Seven Psychopaths, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri was another one of my favorites of his. I thought it was a really strongly acted film, but very funny, unexpected, kind of. Yeah, I think he's kind of like a David O. Russell, where it's just blunt kind of dialogue. Filmmaking is really on a nice level. What about Banshees of Inisherin? Are we talking? We've seen a lot of buzz, at least in the acting categories. I know McDonough picked up a Directors Guild nomination. I mean, is this worthy of the hype?
Yes, it is. It's almost definitely going to get a Best Picture, and possibly, to my understanding, it's in contention. Four of its actors are in contention for
Sure.
acting awards. Um, to In Bruges, I will add the scene between Brendan Gleeson and Ray Fiennes at the little outdoor cafe is one of
Yeah.
my favorite scenes in that movie. Um, and one more point. Transitioning from the Fablemans to Banshees,
Mm,
it's the Golden Globe winner for Best Motion Picture Drama,
correct.
to
Yeah.
the Golden Globe winner for Best Picture Musical or Comedy.
Right.
But this is a very funny movie. I saw it. I had to wait for it to come to HBO Max,
Okay.
um, which turned out to be kind of a good thing because I was able to watch it with closed captioning.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to understand everybody with all the very thick Irish accents in this movie.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So I was able to pick up on all the great dialogue. But it's a very funny movie. Um, Basically, Brendan Gleeson's character um, tells Colin Farrell's character one day they're old friends, but he just tells him one day that they're no longer friends
Mhm.
because Colin Farrell's character is too dull and he's not intellectually stimulating for him.
Right.
And at first it's kind of a slug because it's just Colin Farrell going Why doesn't he like me for half the movie? Like
Right.
it's a Seinfeld episode. But then the relationship gets more twisted and the stakes get higher. Um, and that's when the pitch black humor really kicks in, and that's when the movie gets funnier and award worthy.
Right. Well, I know, one of the things we've talked about is, the Oscars, voters, especially for Best Picture, they tend to go after, big scope. You can be a small film, but sort of something in the sense of it's a bigger scope. You talk about this, and obviously, I don't want to discredit the plot lines of just being a friendship that ends, but that's kind of how they're selling it, and a lot of the trailers have sold it. Do you feel like this movie, and we just talked about the Fablemans having this filmmaker love of filmmaking and putting that out there on screen for the Oscar bait? Everybody loves voting for movies that are made about filmmaking and things like that to a large degree. Does this have like that big scope feel that could become an Oscar Best Picture contender? Because right now, it doesn't really seem like there's a direct favorite, even though like you said, the Fablemans and Banshees are coming off of Golden Globe wins. But right now, it doesn't seem like there's a huge betting favorite for Best Picture because none of them have really dominated at the box office to really get out into the public eye. So, do you think that Banshees maybe has that ability to get into the Best Picture conversation with voters?
Absolutely, I do. I think there are three movies that are very strong Best Picture contenders at this point that are emerging as front runners.
Yeah.
Banshees is one of them. Fablemans is the other, and Everything Everywhere All at Once
Right.
seems
Yeah.
to be
Definitely. Yeah.
uh, stomping through award season.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, what is your final grade here for the Banshees of Inisherin?
B minus because it does take a while to get going, but once it does, it's very compelling movie.
Okay, fantastic. Maybe real quick too, since we have transitioned here into the new year. Just wanted to ask you real quick, what were your thoughts on the year that was 2022 in movies? Were there any favorites of yours that stood out, or any movies that if someone asked you what was your favorite movie of the year, what would you tell them?
I'd probably go with Turning Red from Pixar.
Yeah,
Yeah, that one was probably my favorite. I also really liked Avatar: The Way of Water.
yeah,
I gave those both A minuses
yeah.
in the column. Um, and Turning Red was like the last really great Pixar movie before Pixar really fell off for me with Lightyear.
Yeah, yeah, I know we talked about that. I really loved Turning Red as well. I thought it was a really sort of unfortunate that they didn't give it a theatrical release,
Yeah,
because it was a real nice gem. I thought from Pixar's perspective. So yeah, unfortunately, I did like Lightyear a lot more than you did. So I guess we'll disagree on that. But I really loved Turning Red though quite a bit. It was a pleasant surprise because I was a little nervous. I thought, well, they're kind of limping it out on Disney Plus, not really giving it the normal Pixar treatment. But it was a fantastic, fun ride and a coming of age story from the female perspective, which was something you don't usually get, especially in animated film. So fantastic film. So I definitely appreciate your pick there because it was a very underrated. Now I don't know that it'll win best animated feature because I think Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which I did see, is kind of that Oscar bait type. But best picture for animated feature. But I wouldn't be shocked if Turning Red is able to squeeze one out there for the Academy. So
it does come
well,
from a more recognizable studio.
right, exactly. True. And I think, not that people didn't see Pinocchio, but I think maybe they'll get confused about the Tom Hanks live action movie, maybe, and just think,
Yeah,
let's give it to Turning Red, maybe. So it'll be that'll be one of the more interesting battles for me at the Academy. But, well, Bob, as
what
always,
about you? Do you have a favorite from 2022?
oh, I think Turning Red out of the movie, it was a light year for movies. Not no pun intended there with Lightyear the movie, but it was a lighter year for me going to the movies. I really enjoyed my experience of the Batman. I know you weren't as big of a fan But I did see that in Dolby Cinema, and the sound quality from that Atmos track was just fantastic, rumbling my seat. But Turning Red was fantastic. I mean, I could watch that again and again and again. It had a lot of rewatchability, but also being an interesting story. Um, Pinocchio as well was another one for me that, and I'm a Del Toro fan, and I think it was better than The Shape of Water. It wasn't quite Pan's Labyrinth level for me, which I love Pan's Labyrinth, so that's high praise coming from me. But Del Toro's Pinocchio was a really beautifully animated stop motion puppet film with a lot more emotion than you would expect from puppets. So he did a great job, I think. Especially since we've seen the Robert Zemeckis one earlier in the year. I know there was an Italian language Pinocchio a few years ago, so we've had a lot of Pinocchio movies that have come out, but this is by far the best one of the bunch. And it maybe not quite as good as the 1940s classic, but it's certainly in that ballpark, I believe. So um, a very interesting film from Del Toro as he once again blends the fantasy world of the Pinocchio world with sort of the backdrop of the realities of Mussolini and the dictatorship. So much like he kind of did with Pan's Labyrinth, I thought too, during the Spanish Revolution. So
Yeah.
a good year in film. Probably saw a little bit more TV than I did film, but it was
Understandable.
yeah. But it was a good year though, and excited for some releases this year. Anything coming up for you for next week, Bob? What do you have on the horizon?
Well, A Man Called Otto will probably wind up being my print review. I also plan to see Plane.
Oh yeah, Gerard Butler. Yeah.
Thriller with Gerard Butler. Yeah.
All right. Well, Bob, as always, we appreciate your time, and we will talk to you next week.
Maybe in 2 weeks,
Maybe? 2 weeks,
uh,
okay.
whenever we see each other next, this is the highlight of my week.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Mooney. Welcome to what is our new Hope Interrupted podcast based on the work from our book, Hope Interrupted, that I co-authored with my good friend Byron McCauley.
Hey, Jennifer, I'm looking forward to this podcast as much as I was looking forward to writing this book with you. We hope to interview some high impact folks as well as have a little fun.
We're going to cover stories of hope. To learn more about our podcast and our book, please visit www.hopeinterrupted.com.